Please rise for the Star-Spangled Banner. Thank you very much. Rousing rendition. Mr. Coro, can you do me the honors? Quiet, please. Mr. Coro has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, fellow town meeting members. You know, every year when we gather here, we have the great pleasure to greet our friends from Nagao-Kakio, Japan, who are members of our sister city, which is celebrating its 35th anniversary this year. And Mr. Connor Boyle is going to introduce the students in the group, but before that, you know, because it is a milestone year, we also have an official delegation that is accompanying the students. And I got to meet them last night, and it is really my profound honor, with the town meeting's consent and the moderator's indulgence, to introduce to you the mayor of Nagao-Kakio, Kengo Nagakoji.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kengo Nakakoji. I'm the mayor of Nagao City in Kyoto, Japan. I truly appreciate this opportunity to express my gratitude to you all. I'm here to celebrate the 35th anniversary of our sister cities' relationship between Arlington and Nagao-Kakio. This all started in 1975, and so we can now celebrate our 35th anniversary. I really appreciate that this relationship has been supported by so many people. Matsunobu Nakakoji, my grandfather, was the vice mayor of the city and helped to organize things from outside. I'm so proud to have a part in this important history of ours. This is also the 50th anniversary of the student exchange program. I believe each one made their own very special memories with their host families and a different culture. Keeping this program is our challenge and responsibility. But with the support of people in the Arlington government, like the chair of the Board of Selectmen, Diane Mahon, your superintendent, Dr. Boddy, and the late Kevin Greeley, as well as active and caring students like Sue Schaeffer and Joanne Lutenberg. I believe that we will be successful. Lastly, we would all like to express our deepest appreciation, especially for all host families, for all of your kindness, hard work, and dedication. And we all hope to strengthen our relationship in the future. I am excited to experience everything that is Arlington during my stay here. And we all are looking forward to welcoming many of you to Nagaokyo in this fall. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Boyle.
Good evening, everyone. So it's never easy to follow a great speech, and I think that's exactly what he just gave. But I want to reiterate, from the Nagaokyo side, the work and the commitment that you all have, and on our side as well, have to this program is really commendable. The students every year have wonderful, smiling faces, and they're always trying new things and learning new things about a different culture. And the idea that we can have a better future together through the commitments to programs like these is actually exactly what the students will come out in just a moment to sing about. The song is called Believe, and if you listen to the lyrics, most of them are in Japanese. I still have problems understanding some of them, but that being said, there is a little bit of English in there, and it's I believe in future. The Japanese side of the lyrics actually go on to say that working together, picking each other up, and walking together along the path is the way to make the world a better place. So that being said, they will sing the song Believe. So please welcome them in, and we'll put them up on stage. Thank you.
All righty, now the fun and games are done. Just for the new folks, I just want to explain, at the end of the last meeting, before I called for the adjournment of the evening, I asked for notices of reconsideration. Reconsideration is if you wish to give us notice that you may want to re-vote an article, you can raise your hand and give a notice of reconsideration, but only if you voted on the prevailing side. So the other night, 2 people gave notice when I went back and looked at our clicker votes. One of them actually had voted on the prevailing side, the other one had not. So that person can't reconsider. But the person who did notice reconsideration can move for reconsideration any time prior to the meeting being dissolved. But to reconsider, you have to be able to give us new information that wasn't available at the time that the original vote was taken. It's not just I feel like voting again. It's what purpose do you arise in the middle of my remarks, sir? That's what I'm giving you. What is your point of information? A zoning article requires 2/3 vote. Even if it gets 60%, it loses. If it gets 64%, it loses. It has to pass by greater than 66 2/3%. So what? It's not 2/3. It's a supermajority on zoning articles and bonding articles. So that's not new information, though. Yeah, I did. He said the prevailing side is the no's. You had to vote no. On Article 15, let's say, it lost. That's the prevailing side. So the person that voted no can move for reconsideration. The person that voted yes can't. So those 2 people can come up and see me, or they should know how they voted. But this is just more of an education for the new folks of what reconsideration is. So if you voted on something you want to give notice, you should raise your hand and yell out your name and what article you want to reconsider on. Okay, let's do our clicker test. Make sure they're turned on. And the question tonight, U.S. presidents originally lived in the President's Palace, but the name was changed to avoid affection of royalty. True or false? 1 for yes, 2 for no. So we got to, it's Jeff? Jeff. We got to give Jeff a little leeway. Tim's not here. We didn't get a light, though. All righty. Well, let's, oh, there's our light. So 1 for yes, 2 for no. It was originally called the President's Palace. Good thing we're having a test. You can try it again. All right. Good thing we're having a test vote. We're going to put testing Jeff's medal. Haha. There we go. And it's also not counting down yet, so he has to hit the go button. There we go. Dang, there we go. All right, go ahead and vote. It's about the presidential palace. This is a good thing it's a test vote. All right, now scroll through all the names. Here we go. So, true. Originally in New York City, it was changed in 1810 to Executive Manor and then in 1902 it became the White House. Are there any town meeting members who have yet to be sworn in? Any new or re-elected town meeting members who have not been sworn in yet? If so, please rise. Seeing none. Ms. Mahan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sorry. It is requested that the members of the Select Board and elected officials of the town, town manager, department heads of the town and staff, superintendent of schools and staff, committees, commissions, and boards of the town, Minuteman Regional Vocational Technical School District Committee and superintendent, members of the Electronic Voting Committee and staff, members of the General Court representing Arlington, and also any consultants who have been retained to work for the town relative to articles to be acted on by this meeting, representatives of interested parties of Article 1, and representatives of the news media be permitted to sit within the special town meeting enclosure.
Second. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? We're actually in the special town meeting now. That's why we're going through this again. Madam Clerk, do you have reason to believe that the warrant was duly served and posted in the town of Arlington? And she so certifies and declares. Ms. Mahan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It is moved that if all the business of the meeting is set forth in the warrant for the special town meeting is not disposed of at this session, when the meeting adjourns, it adjourns to Wednesday, May 1st, 2019 at 8 p.m.
All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? Any announcements or resolutions? Mr. Hayner.
Mr. Moderator, Bill Hayner, Precinct 2. I would like to share with the town meeting members that over the past couple of years I've had the privilege of working with third grade teachers in the town to do mock town meetings. Tonight we have students from Stratton who had their town meeting in the fall, Dallin who had their town meeting last week with the setup here, and Thompson will have theirs in May. So I'd ask the town meeting members, the future ones up in the gallery, to please stand and be acknowledged by our town meeting members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayner. Thank you, kids. Hope you enjoy it as much as we do. Come on, I'm serious. Any reports of committees? Mr. Thielman.
Mr. Moderator, Jeff Thielman, Precinct 12, Chair of the High School Building Committee. I move acceptance of the High School Building Committee report to town meeting.
All in favor, please, so of accepting the report, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? It is so accepted. Mr. Tosti.
I move that the town meeting accept the report of the Finance Committee for the special town meeting, which is in the Green Book at the end of the warrant articles.
All in favor, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? So accepted. Any other reports or committees for the special town meeting? Mr. Tosti, did you have a correction?
Should I make the motion to put the articles before the town meeting without further action?
Yes, please do.
I move that the articles in the Finance Committee be before this meeting without further action.
All in favor, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? So they are so in front of the town meeting. Al, did you want to make your correction?
Fellow town meeting members, I just have a couple of things to say because you're going to hear more about the high school than you probably ever want to know. But in the Finance Committee report, there is, I assume you're all on Article 1 of that, I just need to change the amount. The amount that is in the Finance Committee report is $291,400,000. That was the number that was correct at the time. But when the Mass School Building Authority voted to endorse the high school project, the number was changed to the following: $290,851,820. So this is just to match our number to their number, and since they're giving us all this money, I think we should do that. $290,851,820.
Okay, so we can all make that technical correction to our vote as contained in page 25 of the Finance Committee report. We can do that without vote. Thank you, Mr. Tosti, for that.
I just want to make a couple of comments before the main presentation on the high school. The Finance Committee unanimously supports this project, and we urge you to support it the same. And I just wanted to tell you a brief story which happened in this town many years ago in the 1970s. At that point, we had finished building some of the elementary schools. We had finished renovating the two junior high schools, and we were on our way to renovating the high school, which was in desperate need of it. The project was put together. It involved new buildings, tearing down some of the old ones, even involved a pool and a athletic facility. The project was voted overwhelmingly by this town meeting, but some residents took it to an election, to a referendum election back in the 70s. And it was voted down. School project made a couple of changes, revamped it, went back out. This body voted it overwhelmingly again, and then the same people took it to a referendum, and the referendum was successful in defeating the high school project. At that point, the whole thing had to be thrown out. The school committee went back to work, and I think about a year and a half or 2 years later, they came back with a high school project, which was strictly a renovation, I think, except for one of the gyms. It passed this town meeting. There was no referendum. It became the high school project, which we have now. It was totally renovated. There was pillars in the middle of classrooms. By then, the school reimbursement levels had changed. They were going to pay for 2/3. I think we ended up getting 40%. The project was more costly because of the wait in the 2 years and the renovation of it. So the town ended up experiencing a lesser school with lesser facilities for a lot more money. So please don't repeat the same mistake. I hope the town does not repeat the same mistake we made it in the 70s. This is a good project. I urge your support. Thank you.
Okay. Quiet, please. I'm going to wait till after the school committee gives its presentation to start taking names to the list, because I want to pay attention to that as well. So after they give their presentation, I'll start taking names from the list. So, Mr. Thielman, we now have before us Article 1 of the special town meeting of April 29th, 2019. Mr. Thielman?
Jeff Thielman, Precinct 12, member of the school committee and the chairperson of the Arlington High School Building Committee. We have 6 presenters tonight, including the principal of the high school, the town manager, members of the building committee, and a video presentation. And so we're going to ask for a full hour so town meeting has a full understanding of the complexities of this project.
So we're going to, okay, the school, sir.
Just a question, will those who dare to have a different view be given, if not an equivalent amount of time, at least a fair amount of time to present their side?
I would hope that all people on both sides get the prerogative of this meeting to air their opinions and sides. This is a major question for the town of Arlington. We're being asked to bond $200 or send $290 million. I think we should discuss it as long as we need to. So that being said, they have requested 1 hour of time. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? You have your 1 hour, sir.
Thank you very much. I want to begin by thanking the Arlington High School Building Committee for its tireless work over the past 2.5 years. And I would ask any member of the committee who is here tonight to stand and be recognized. I also want to recognize and thank our owner's project manager, Skanska, and our architectural firm, HMFH. Both have done great work for the town, and representatives of each firm are with us this evening. Finally, I want to recognize our legislative delegation, State Senator Sidney Friedman, State Representative Sean Garbley, a proud Arlington High School alumnus, and State Representative Dave Rogers are all here tonight. They support this project. They've been working with the state on our behalf, lobbying very hard for the funding that we're getting, and we appreciate the time and the effort they have put into this endeavor. Senator Friedman will speak on their behalf later in the evening. As Mr. Tosti said, tonight we are formally requesting that you vote affirmatively on Article 1, which calls for the appropriation of $290,800,000 for a new high school, with just under 30% of this amount, approximately $86 million, coming from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. On June 11th, this same question goes to the voters, and we ask you, your friends and neighbors, to vote yes that day as well. We hope you've had a chance to read our report, which we will reference in this evening's presentation. Let me be very clear. Arlington needs a new high school because of increasing enrollment and a deteriorating and outdated facility that no longer meets today's educational standards. The time to build is now. Delaying this project for any reason will cost taxpayers more money and will likely result in Arlington losing or receiving less state funding. We believe the proposed new high school is the best educational and financial choice for Arlington, and we hope by the end of this evening you feel the same way. So why do we need a new high school? Let me take a moment to put this project in context. Today, Arlington High School serves nearly 1,400 students, and it is one of the highest performing schools in the Commonwealth. The academic achievements of our students and the excellent teaching that takes place at AHS, however, do not tell the whole story. In 2013, our accrediting agency, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, placed Arlington High School on warning status because of issues with the facility that negatively impact student learning. The science labs are inadequate and do not meet today's educational standards. Multiple classrooms have obstructed views due to columns retained from previous renovations. Because of the poor configuration of the building and the lack of space, students sit in hallways and stairwells to collaborate. Throughout the building, classrooms are consistently too hot or too cold. There are numerous window and roof leaks. There is one undersized elevator for the 390,000 square foot complex. And the media center and cafeteria are both overflowing. The list goes on and on, just ask the students. In addition to the challenges to the physical plant, we are at a moment of rising enrollment, which the current facility cannot accommodate. Over the past decade, the district's enrollment has increased by 1,700 students, the equivalent of 3 elementary schools. Over the next 3 years alone, the high school's enrollment is expected to increase by more than 200 students, and we anticipate this growth to continue. The school has a confusing and inefficient layout with more than 1.5 miles of hallways to navigate and maintain. The campus that we have today emerged because of a series of additions and renovations that occurred between 1914 and 1981. As Mr. Tassi said, in the mid-1970s, the voters turned down a proposed new high school. And 6 years later, the town ended up spending more money on the 1980 and 1981 additions than it would have spent on the all-new facility proposed in 1975. I think we can all agree that we do not want to make this mistake again. Let me take a moment to explain the town's partnership with the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or MSBA. The MSBA provides technical and financial assistance to cities and towns in Massachusetts when they want to build and rebuild their public schools. In 2016, after our second application, the MSBA invited Arlington into its grant program, and the town formed the building committee. With assistance from the state, we chose our architects and our owner's project manager, and we began studying different ways to address the serious issues facing Arlington High School. There were many steps in the MSBA process, but a notable one was determining the building's design enrollment. The number of students, more than any other factor, determines the size and ultimately the cost of the school. In 2016 and 2017, we had a series of meetings with the MSBA, ultimately agreeing to a design enrollment of 1,755 students. This figure informs the number of homerooms we will have in the school, but it is not a cap on enrollment. The design is flexible enough to have educational programming for more than 1,755 students. Our high school is unique in many ways. One of the complexities that we need to address is that the school has multiple functions that support the entire town. State law requires Arlington to have a public preschool and to offer services to children with special education needs beginning at age 3. For many years now, Arlington High School has been the home of the Menominee Preschool, which serves more than 150 children. It is a wonderful program that is integrated into the high school. In fact, students from AHS's early childhood education classes do some of their practical studies at the preschool. The high school also is home to part of the Lab Collaborative, a partnership with Lexington, Burlington, Bedford, and Belmont to provide holistic special education services to children. The offices of Arlington Community Education reside in the facility because of the program's extensive use of the building. Our school is filled every night of the week with community members taking courses in that program. Another challenge that makes AHS unique is that we are building on a compact and complicated site. The high school campus is a little more than 22 acres, while the MSBA target is that a high school should be located on a property with a minimum of 25 acres. There is a 24-foot grade change from the front to the back of the building, and Mill Brook runs underneath the campus. In addition, parts of the site are contaminated, although the grounds are regularly monitored according to state and federal regulations, and all chromium contamination in the area around AHS is capped. These factors make our construction project more complex than others. The high school currently contains several townside services, including the comptroller, information technology, payroll, and facilities departments. Finally, the district offices are located at Arlington High School. During the past year, the building committee made several decisions about where to place these offices. I want to explain these to town meeting at this time. The committee voted to move the comptroller, information technology, and facilities departments out of the school. The district offices were kept in the building because our analysis showed this was less costly than moving them elsewhere. This same study determined that the Parmenter School could not permanently accommodate the Menominee Preschool because it is not large enough to meet the state standards for publicly administered preschools. This prompted us to keep the preschool at Arlington High. By including the preschool in the high school rebuild project, we are able to fund it partially with MSBA dollars, which is a better deal for the taxpayers. As you all know, we made significant decisions about the overall design of the school. This part of the process was lengthy and involved many spirited discussions with members of the community, which was a good thing for the town and for this project. Over the course of 8 public forums and multiple surveys, we invited anyone with an interest in the project to give us their thoughts. I think everyone here realizes that it is not possible for this building or for any large-scale public project to meet the desires and expectations of everyone in town. After narrowing the choices to 4 in the spring of 2018, we asked the architects to present alternatives based on community and committee feedback. In June of 2018, we voted to submit a preferred design concept to the MSBA for a completely new high school. The plan calls for the high school to be built in phases with no interruption to student learning or activities. The design we chose preserves 2/3 of the front lawn and is the best combination of cost-effectiveness, educational design, and a favorable construction timeline. We chose to build a new school because renovating part of the current facility and building an addition would have cost $25 million more, would take 1.25 years longer to build, and would have caused AHS to operate for 2 years without a gym and for another 2 years without an auditorium. With input from the community, we opted for a design that respected Arlington's past, but allowed for a modern and efficient building that is flexible enough to meet the changing needs of today's students. Ultimately, the design of the building was guided by an educational plan and vision developed by Arlington High School Principal Dr. Matthew Jenger, his staff, district leadership, and community members. At this time, I want to call Dr. Jenger to the podium to speak about the development of the educational plan and how it is incorporated into the new school.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight. As an Arlington resident, it's really exciting to be part of this project and part of this meeting. I want to begin by explaining the context of our work, by talking about rising expectations in education.
You have to say your name and address for the record.
Matthew Jenger, 109 Columbia Road. That would be precinct 13, I believe. I want to begin by explaining the context of our work, by talking about rising expectations in education, the research our faculty and staff did in creating the educational plan, and our goal of creating balanced and flexible spaces for learning and student life. First, it's important to note that Arlington High School is really an exceptional school. I say this whenever I'm in front of anyone. Over the last 5 years, Arlington has risen from 25th in the state of Massachusetts to 9th. It's important. And it's important to note that if Massachusetts were a country, Massachusetts would be among the top 5 countries in the world. That means that Arlington High School is one of the best schools and one of the best public systems in the world. People who've lived in Arlington sometimes ask me a question. They recall that this building once housed more students than are in it now and more than it is planned for. And they ask why we can't accommodate the growing enrollment. The simple answer is not simple. First, that the building cannot accommodate the educational needs of a modern school. Right now, only 23% of our classrooms are up to the current size standard. Many of our classrooms have obstructed views. We will get a better result, and it's more cost-effective to start new. More importantly, in addition to the programs that Jeff noted, the lab, the preschool, and the district offices, changes in the law, No Child Left Behind, and special education, have increased the expectation of schools to serve a wider range of student needs. Graduation rates have risen from 75% in the 80s to 87% nationally. Our graduation rate is 98%. This requires a wider range of programs and facilities, both for special education services and for student support. At the same time, changes in technology have increased the need for students to learn with, about, and from computers and digital production tools. In the past, the things that we used to learn, we still learn, but we've added on more things that we need to do and more facilities that we need to do it with. So let me go back and explain how we got to this plan. When Arlington began planning for this project 5 years ago, staff researched and visited schools and programs around the state to choose what was best, to reflect on current and future practices, and to develop programming and capacity to support the educational vision. Two things became clear. We wanted a building that was both balanced and flexible. Some of the buildings we saw placed a priority on one area or one group of students. Others had layouts that rigidly followed a current educational model and could not easily be adapted. We wanted to avoid both of these errors. For this reason, the Arlington design provides balance, appropriate facilities for all children and the whole child. Performing arts, athletics, library, support services, specialized spaces are distributed well, but not excessively, to support all in the student community. Second, going on that one, central spaces, I never read from a script. Central spaces are larger than minimum to support enrollment growth, but none are to the maximum. Theater, gym, library, cafeteria. In many schools, we saw that one or more of these programs was maximized to the detriment of others. The design is also flexible. It supports our current vision and educational practice, but it also allows for a range of other uses for 50 years and beyond. I'm so excited by the ways you can see the educational vision executed in the facilities and the adjacencies of the building, but I'm also excited that I can see multiple options for growth and change. I'll now walk through the elements of the vision and give a sense of how they're reflected in the building. First, let me talk about departments and neighborhoods. The building has two academic wings, STEAM and Humanities. Arlington currently has a strong departmental structure and curriculum. We want to take advantage of that. We've kept that structure in the new building with departments positioned to support departmental work and natural interdisciplinary connections. The STEAM wing houses science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, with science labs and math labs located on each floor, and arts and engineering makerspaces located on the main floor. The Humanities wing houses family and consumer science, English, world language, and history, and both are linked by the Library Learning Commons. The academic wings are laid out in neighborhoods. As you can see, the classrooms are located around halls designed for groups and not passageways to other places. And this serves three purposes. One, it supports our house structure. The current building is divided into small groups to make the building feel smaller. We have houses that have the same dean, guidance counselors, and advisory group over 4 years. Second, because the hallways are not passageways to somewhere else, students only enter those areas with a reason. You can use them for school and classroom activities without being concerned about people wandering through or heading to other places. And last, it enables interdisciplinary cooperation and flexible programming. It would be easy to create a school within a school or an interdisciplinary team by repurposing one or more of these classroom suites. Next, I'd like to talk about what is one of my favorite parts of the building, the interdisciplinary learning commons, what people call often the central spine. The interdisciplinary learning commons is located in the central spine. The central commons brings the school together for shared spaces, collaboration, and support. It includes the library, central hall, cafeteria, the discourse lab, and the green roof. It houses research tools, technology, gathering and breakout spaces to support teaching and learning in the future. We sometimes use the term makerspace. We apologize for educational jargon. These are classrooms housing specialized technology for making things, hands-on and applied learning, such as our music production studio, our CAD lab, our digital media lab, and our wood shop. All of these places are places we currently squeeze into less than ideal spaces. In addition, when students were consulted about the new building, they talked about varied and welcoming gathering spaces, access to green space and natural light, and more bathrooms, but I won't go into that here. The idea is that this commons creates a welcoming community space and natural areas for students and staff to gather and collaborate. This gives students a sense of independence while being easily supervised. That's the part I like. The Learning Commons is a place to bring together all these elements of the school. Last but not least, we have two community wings, the Performing Arts and the Athletics wings. These two wings house the main gathering spaces for events and the facilities to support our performing arts and physical education programs. Both can easily be sectioned off from the building, so we can more easily run community events outside of school hours. For anyone who has ever been to any one of our productions, you know that our performing arts programs are an award-winning group, done currently in less than ideal facilities. The current theater, for example, has 900 seats. It is sized for 550. Our little theater is a small place underneath. Our band room is a couple of classrooms with the wall taken down. The Performing Arts Wing will house new 900-seat theater, up to date, a black box little theater, band room, chorus rooms, and digital music lab, all built to current standards. Athletics, once again, we know that Ponder Physical Education and Athletics have a winning history. The new athletics facility will house a larger main gym with an indoor jogging track, a second gym sized comparably to the Blue Gym, an alternative gym for smaller programming, and a fitness room. It will give us direct access to the fields and will be easily closed off after hours to allow more security in athletics. One advantage of this will be allow for community activities after hours, such as walking by community members on the track or late-night gym for students. I'm excited by how closely we've been able to realize our educational vision. I'm excited about a school that will excite and welcome both students, teachers, and the community, and support truly exceptional education in Arlington for years to come. I don't talk a little bit about the field, but that's only because I didn't want to overlap with John. Thank you very much for your time.
We have been fortunate to have a senior architect on our committee who has been involved in every building project in the town of Arlington over the past 20-plus years. I'm going to call him to speak now, John Cole.
John Cole, Precinct 11. And over those 20 years, with the support of this body and the taxpayers of this town, we have rebuilt or built new 7 elementary schools and 2 middle schools. Tonight, we have the opportunity to finish the job. I'd like to start by talking about the spine, the hub of the school that Matthew described a few moments ago. This is an image that brings joy to the heart of an architect. It is open. It is light-filled. It is the crossroads of the school where all the components and elements of a comprehensive high school cross paths, meet, discuss in an informal setting. It is the heart of the educational vision. The circulation from Massachusetts Avenue on the left to the fields on the right is clear and simple. You enter at point A or point B, you walk a straight line, you make one turn, right or left, to get to your destination. No more wandering around mazes and stairs that go nowhere, hoping you have a student Sherpa to get you home. In the center is the forum. That connects the Massachusetts Avenue level to the field level. It's a grade drop of about 24 feet, and it's a challenge. Our architects have cleverly turned it into a very interesting space. On the right side, closest to me, it's a stairway connecting up and down. On the left, it splays out into tiered seating to create that informal area for everybody to meet and converse, maybe about social things, but also to discuss the ideas brought forth in the classrooms. Next slide. I'd also like to take a moment for a personal reflection as to why we chose a new school as opposed to renovation and addition. Jeff's been into some of it, but as an architect, I don't believe in taking down buildings lightly. When we went through this process, as mentioned, we studied after we had determined no other site would work and the existing school was too small to house our needs. We looked at 7 options with permutations for a new school or addition renovation. Got boiled down to 4. And my colleagues and I decided a new school was best for 3 reasons. Number 1, logistics. to renovate the existing would house students in modular classrooms for an extended period of time at a cost of $5 million unreimbursed by the state. Also, as mentioned, no gym, no auditorium for a period of 2 years. Tell me how you're going to make that work. And secondly, cost. $25 million was the difference between new construction and renovation addition. That's enough to buy a new elementary school. I think we did well to save that money. Lastly is function. Once you get past the facades, which have sentimental value to many people in this room and the community, myself included, proud parent of 2 graduates. But once you get past those facades, there's no there there. By maintaining them, we would embed the inefficiencies of the existing plant into the new facility. In my view, that was unconscionable. It was a disservice to the educational program and a disservice to the taxpayers to ask them to pay more for an inferior product. That being said, respecting the history and the legacy of the site is important to us and many others. This image here shows the facade of the Fusco building, the oldest building on the site, relocated along the spine as the entry to the Performing Arts Wing. We have also made an effort creatively to find a way to incorporate an image of the column house facade on a curtain wall, a large expanse of glass that will face one of the new courtyards. In addition, we are preserving many artifacts from the existing buildings as listed on the screen. And lastly, we have formed a subcommittee to inventory and catalog all of the memorials on the site and in the building so that they can be respectfully reincorporated into the new facility. Now let's talk about the site plan of a building that excites me. Here it is. Take a moment to look at it. In the short term, there are logistical benefits to this configuration, which I'll talk about in a moment. But in the long term, more importantly, there are programmatic benefits. Number one, we've increased the amount of field space in the back by moving the building closer to Mass Ave. This means a competition varsity baseball field, varsity softball field, with the ability to overlay them with the rectangular sports, lacrosse, field hockey, and soccer. These fields are artificial turf. They'll be lighted, so we're extending their usability both seasonally and daily. In addition, this configuration gives us more educationally appropriate outdoor space. On the left-hand side, an amphitheater associated with the Performing Arts Wing, and on the right-hand side, a courtyard for the maker spaces to spill out in the good weather. They also, by separating the wings, we're bringing more daylight into the educational spaces, which, if you read the research, is very important in a learning environment. In today's school, we do not have daylight in every classroom, nor would we in a renovation. Circulation is another important feature of this site plan. The site is ringed by a 24-foot wide two-way vehicular driveway connecting Mill Street and Mass Ave. There are drop-off spaces in the rear and also on the Mass Ave side. On the east side of the building along the CVS parking lot, there is both pedestrian and bicycle access over what today is a steep drop. Lastly, on the rear side, there's a connection to the Minuteman Bikeway through a ramp along the edge of the baseball field. The parking remains about the same, 225 spaces. However, With the relocation of town offices to other sites, we actually gain about 30 spaces that can accommodate staff growth. And if necessary in future, the parking lot on the Mill Street entry has been designed so that a parking deck could be constructed above it at minimal disruption. So, how do we do it? There's the existing building. There's the new building with the footprint of the existing overlaid on it in dotted line. Now, phase one, we're going to build in front of the school towards Massachusetts Avenue at the closest point about 80 feet from the Ave. This gives us the famous swing space, which is the key to both the schedule and the economics. In this phase, we build the performing arts wing and the STEAM wing first. They will be completed January of 2022, when current freshmen will enter these spaces along with their classmates. That frees up the rear of the site for a cycle of demolition and building in logical counterclockwise fashion. Phase two, demolition of Column House and building of the Humanities Wing, plus district administration and the preschool. Phase three, demolition of Fusco and building of the athletics facilities. That'll be completed September of 2024, when current Arlington third graders will enter a new facility. 8 months later, we will clean up the back, do a little demolition of the red gymnasium, and complete the project. I hope you will support it. I'd like to turn the microphone back to my colleague.
Next, I want to call on Ryan Katofsky, who chairs our Sustainability Subcommittee.
Ryan Katofsky, 534 Summer Street, and I've been told to talk quickly. So we've been working on sustainability and the energy aspects of the building from the beginning, with the goal of making those considerations integral to the project. The first thing we want to do is to build a very energy efficient building, as energy efficient as possible. This will lower the long-term operating costs, but it will also result in a more resilient building. So for example, if there's an extended power outage, the building can maintain its internal comfort for longer. We've done some preliminary energy modeling on the new design, and we anticipate that the new Arlington High School will use about half of the site energy as the current building, but provide vastly superior comfort for its occupants. The next thing we want to do is to build an all-electric building, and one of the reasons why we're doing this is so that we can have a building that will be carbon neutral over time. The town has a town-wide goal of becoming carbon neutral by the year 2050, and a key way to achieving this is to be using electricity for all energy needs. Basically, as the grid gets cleaner over time, the emissions associated with the energy use of the building will decrease and eventually go to zero. There are two key technologies for achieving this. One of them is called ground source heat pumps. These are a very efficient technology for providing both heating and cooling with the same system. The second is solar photovoltaic technology. This is to generate electricity on site. You may have noticed from some of the pictures that you've seen in the previous slides that we already have solar on the high school, as well as several other of the public schools. We have about 200 kilowatts of solar on the current high school. The plan is to move those onto the buildings built in phase one, and we think they're all going to fit. And then we're going to add more to the remainder of the building and also deploy some ground-mounted solar with canopies over one of the parking areas. So as part of this process that we've been going through, we've been participating in something called the Accelerate Performance Program. This is a pilot program offered by our electric and gas utilities, and it provides us with free technical assistance and also guarantees us a minimum level of utility incentives for achieving certain targets regarding energy efficiency. The goal of Accelerate Performance was to adopt aggressive but realistic efficiency targets early in the design process and work to achieve them at little or no incremental cost. As part of our work on this, going into the next phase of the project, we're going to be refining our analysis. We're going to be doing a lot more work on energy and sustainability. That will include a life cycle cost analysis that looks at trade-offs between things like different mechanical systems, various energy conservation measures, and we're going to do that before making any final decisions about the final systems to be used in the building. In addition to the energy aspects of the building, we're looking at a variety of other sustainability features. We've already heard there's going to be a lot of daylight in the classroom wings, much better than before. We're also going to be bringing some daylight into some of the interior parts of the building with light wells. You've also heard that we're going to have much better pedestrian and bicycle access and safety and direct access to the Minuteman Bikeway, which I really hope will encourage more people to walk and bike to the school. We're planning ahead for an electric vehicle future. We're going to have 10% of the parking spaces equipped with chargers, and the remainder of spaces are going to be EV ready, which means it's going to be easy to add chargers as we deem necessary. We're also working on specifications for environmentally friendly finishes and other building materials, and we're planning for recovery of all the food waste from the cafeteria. So I hope that gives you an idea of what we're planning for the new Arlington High School with respect to energy and sustainability. I'm personally very excited about this. This is literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build a sustainable high school. It's not only the right thing to do, but it will also result in a building with lower operating costs, and it'll hopefully inspire all of us to be a little bit more green. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager, to talk about the costs of the project.
Good evening, Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. Tonight, as Jeff has mentioned, we're officially asking Town Meeting to take two actions. First, we're asking for an authorization to borrow funds for this high school project. And second, we're asking for Town Meeting to appropriate funds for the project. As Jeff mentioned earlier, the project budget, as approved by the MSBA Board of Directors, is $290.8 million. Arlington's share is $204.8 million, and the MSBA's share is $86 million. This makes Arlington's effective reimbursement rate approximately 30%. This project has been a partnership with the MSBA from the start, and we don't only benefit from their significant financial contribution, but also from their strict process and protocol that ensures we are building both an educationally sound and fiscally responsible facility. They monitor our planning decisions and will continue to monitor our design and construction process as the project moves forward. We've benefited greatly from our dedicated and talented building committee, our owner's project manager, and the architectural team, but we also have the benefit of the oversight of an independent third party in the MSBA, which provides an added level of assurance that we are progressing as intended. It's also important to note that as of April 10th, when the MSBA Board of Directors voted to approve this project, the MSBA share of the project is locked in and cannot be increased. Additionally, Arlington's share cannot increase from what is being requested tonight without further action of Town Meeting. If such an increase were to be necessary, we would certainly need to come back before you to justify any increase. However, we feel as though we have planned appropriately to protect against cost overruns and are currently carrying a 12% contingency on the project, which adds up to approximately $30 million. Additionally, as we progress through design development and even into construction, we will look for opportunities to value engineer the project and reduce project cost, so long as any reductions do not impact the educational plan or vision for the school. In terms of how we arrived at the $290.8 million budget, I'd like to talk a little bit about the cost reductions that we've made and the increases in the MSBA reimbursement that we've earned. To start, by selecting an all-new facility option, as has been mentioned several times, the committee saved $25 million as compared to the addition renovation option. Additionally, by moving the comptroller to Town Hall and facilities and IT to what will be the newly renovated DPW facility, we've reduced this high school project budget by $8.4 million. Going further, the committee went through a value engineering exercise which reduced the project budget by another $7.1 million, reducing both the scope of the project in some areas and making choices regarding materials and fixtures. Finally, as mentioned by Ryan, this project is part of the Accelerate Performance Partnership with our electric and gas utilities, and that has guaranteed us a floor of $200,000 in energy rebates. We expect this number to increase as design development advances, but we're very pleased to be guaranteed this amount from the start. Beyond cost reductions, the committee has also worked hard to maximize reimbursement from the MSBA. Our base level reimbursement, assigned by formula, is 45.11%. However, the MSBA allows districts to earn additional reimbursement points under various categories. Through the submission of a detailed proactive building maintenance budget, we've earned an additional 1.61% in reimbursement, which accounts for an approximate increase of $2.8 million over what would have been our base reimbursement level. Additionally, by designing a sustainable building, as Ryan described, we have earned a 2% reimbursement rate increase, accounting for approximately $3.5 million in additional reimbursement. And we've also earned a 1% increase for using the construction manager at risk procurement method, which adds an approximate $1.7 million to our reimbursement. Collectively, these add up to a stated reimbursement rate of 49.72% and an additional $8 million in reimbursement that we would not have received if not for the work of the committee. It's also important to note that even though our stated reimbursement rate is 49.72%, 49.72%, as you saw on a prior slide, our effective reimbursement rate is approximately 30%. This is due to various caps and limits that the MSBA puts on reimbursements, which ultimately reduce the total amount of reimbursement received by the district. Another effort that we've undertaken, if we can go to the next slide, another effort that we've undertaken in regards to cost is the creation of a benchmark analysis that you see on the slide behind me. We've put this together to create as best possible an apples-to-apples comparison of other high school projects in the region of a similar scope and timeline. We've done this to demonstrate that though our project cost represents a very significant expenditure, it is in fact in line with what other cities and towns are seeing as they implement similar projects. For the purposes of this analysis, we are comparing our project to Waltham, Belmont, Saugus, and Somerville. The top row shows us the project cost as was approved by the MSBA for each of these projects. The row below that shows an escalated project cost for each project as though it was being built on the same timeline as the Arlington High School project. Skanska, our owner's project manager, has provided us data from several construction industry indices, and this data shows that construction costs have been escalating approximately 4% per year over the last several years, and forecasts do not show this abating anytime soon. Waltham is on the same timeline as us, but Belmont, Saugus, and Somerville are all ahead of us, and therefore, when you escalate their costs as if they were on our timeline, you can see that their project costs are increased. Below that, you can see the construction cost per square foot of each project. Waltham's is not available yet. Based on the escalated project costs, and that analysis shows that we are in a range similar to the other schools included here. Next, you see that we've provided the design enrollment for each project, and from that, we are able to demonstrate a per pupil cost for each project. Once again, you can see that we are in a range similar to these other schools, and we compare especially favorably to the Waltham and Somerville projects. It's also worth mentioning that our costs include approximately 30,000 square feet of non-AHS space that these other projects do not include, such as the preschool and district administration. Moving to the next slide, you can see the projected taxpayer impact of this project based on various levels of home type and assessment. The annual taxpayer impact based on January 2019 assessed values ranges from $496 for a condominium to $976 for a three-family home. The average impact for a single-family home is $802. It's also worth mentioning here that town meeting will be asked later in the session, at the recommendation of the Select Board, to adopt further tax relief measures for seniors in recognition of the impacts of these projected tax increases. Lastly, shifting from budget, I'd like to say a few words about maintenance. In 2015, with an eye toward professionalizing our facilities management, the town created a facilities department. Since its formation, we have compiled a proactive asset management database which details all of our building systems across all town and school facilities and prescribes all of the required preventative maintenance. Additionally, we have hired trained HVAC and trades personnel and trained them in the operation of the specific building systems that we have. The combination of professional management, a systems-based approach to preventative maintenance, and a talented and trained staff puts us on solid footing to ensure that a significant investment in the high school will be well cared for. Finally, as mentioned earlier, based on our submission of a proactive and detailed maintenance plan to the MSBA, we are receiving an additional 1.61% in reimbursement for this project. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to Jeff.
Many of you have asked why we must build now and what happens if the voters say no on June 11th. I think everyone here and throughout the town knows that a no vote will be demoralizing to faculty, students, and staff throughout the entire district. But let's take a few minutes at this time to talk about what a no vote means in terms of our finances and the physical structure of the facility. We asked our owner's project manager to prepare a detailed analysis of the cost of a no vote, which you can find on pages 35 to 37 of our report. The short answer is that a no vote on the debt exclusion will cost Arlington households more money. This is because no matter what the outcome is tonight and in June, we must address rising enrollment, we have to modernize the facility, and we have to maintain accreditation. Doing nothing is not an option. We are the generation of town leaders that will have to fix these problems with or without state assistance. If the vote fails, the town will have to regroup and restart the design process that took the better part of the past 2 years. We will need to have public hearings and listening sessions, select a design firm and an owner's project manager. We may choose to re-enter the MSBA process, but there is a significant likelihood we will not be accepted. The experience in Lincoln, Massachusetts is one example. This town rejected an MSBA finance school in 2012, tried and failed to re-enter the MSBA system, and the Lincoln taxpayers are now building a new elementary school for more than 3 times what they would have paid in 2012. We asked our owner's project manager and architectural team to lay out the least costly, non-MSBA option that would minimally meet current building codes and accessibility requirements, address enrollment growth, and maintain accreditation. In that analysis, assuming the best case scenario with the fastest timeline, Arlington's taxpayers would need to spend $250 million of our own money, or more than $1,000 per average single-family household, to renovate and build an addition to Arlington High. That is $200 more per average household than the proposal before you this evening. The result of this more costly investment for Arlington taxpayers would be a challenging and confusing layout for the high school, very much like what we have today. Many core spaces would be undersized with no natural light. Classrooms would continue to be obstructed, and because of ADA regulations, the renovated auditorium would have 566 seats as opposed to the 900 we have now and plan to have in the new school. The cafeteria and the gym spaces would be smaller than those in our current design. We would spend more money, the process would take years longer, and our students and teachers would work and study in a school that is inferior to the one we are proposing this evening. A no vote puts our town on the path of repeating Arlington's experience of the 1970s. I believe everyone in this room wants to do right by our students. Our hope is that Arlington and town meeting will choose the option that is the most fiscally responsible and the quickest way to deliver the best educational option to our students. To show you what this option looks like, I want to share with town meeting the following fly-through video of the new school. The school you just saw is about the future, a future we have the chance to shape. Inside and outside of the building, our students will continue to undergo all the crazy, exciting, emotional, and wonderful things that happen as they progress from freshman to senior year. However, with your help, they will study in a safer and more secure building. It will be easier to navigate. It will be filled with natural light. Science will be taught in spaces that meet national and state standards. Theater, music, and arts programs will take place in spaces that are equal to our town's outstanding reputation. Playing fields will allow for longer practices and longer seasons. And this improved facility will help Arlington attract and retain talented staff who want to work and teach in a school that embodies 21st century learning practices. This is a moment that only comes once in a generation. Over the past 2.5 years, we have had a wonderful dialogue about what people in town value and want to see in the school. Now, together, we have the chance to turn this vision from idea into reality. Together, we can create a school that will be a landmark and a source of civic pride for years to come. I ask everyone here to join me tonight in voting a resounding yes on this warrant article and a yes on the debt exclusion on June 11th, so that together we can get to work and build this wonderful new high school. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We're going to hear from Senator Friedman, then we're going to take our break, and you can start raising your hands now. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Cindy Friedman, State Senator, and also a resident of Arlington. I'm pleased to join you tonight as you debate moving forward with this critical project. Together with Rep. Rogers and Rep. Garbely, I've been following and supporting the town's application process to the Mass School Building Authority over the past 5 years since Arlington first submitted its statement of interest to enter the process. And I am here to tell you that the three of us enthusiastically endorse you moving forward with the building of Arlington High School. I've been asked to outline from the state perspective what the process would be if the town chooses not to pass a debt exclusion to fund the project at this time. MSBA funding is highly competitive and is becoming even more so. The MSBA annually receives about 130 to 150 applications from school districts for funding. Each year, close to 70 school districts will apply for core funding, and somewhere between 12 and 15 schools in the past received that funding. Arlington applied for and needs core funding, for this is a major project. Each year, the MSBA application process starts anew. The process, as I said, is extremely competitive, and fewer schools are being funded due to the cost of construction and the MSBA cap. And this speaks to what you heard the town manager say when he was doing the comparison of other schools. Therefore, and I want to point out that this year was the lowest number of schools that were approved for core funding at 12. And the MSBA expects that these lower numbers will continue because we do not see any abatement of the increases in the cost of construction. So therefore, even though Arlington received approval in this past year, prior approval would not be considered as part of the town's application next year or in a future year. Arlington would be starting from scratch. MSBA reviews all applications as if they were submitted for the first time. This would mean that the MSBA approval process would at minimum take about 5 years. So 5 years from 2020 puts the project timeline at 2025 to potentially receiving funding from MSBA. and then an additional 5 years to design and build the school. This would put the completion at the minimum at 2030. But again, I spoke to MSBA today, and they said there have been about 18 schools that have turned down funding for one reason or another since 2008, and none of those schools, to their knowledge, have been put back on the list. Arlington could move ahead without MSBA funding, as you heard, but would lose out on the $86 million. So that's about it from the MSBA. I want to congratulate everyone on the excellent work you all have done to earn this position. It is not easy. It is a competitive and very rigorous process, and I think you should be very proud of the town and the town building committee for the work they've done. I want to say one other thing. I had 3 kids who attended this high school, a couple of them in the 80s, a couple of them in the 2000s. Even at that time, with a very different educational model, this school needed to be rebuilt. You can imagine the change from the 80s to the 2000s. So it's many years later, and our whole model of education is changing, and this school reflects the best that I believe we can have in a physical space for education, and also it's what our kids deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, let's take our 7-minute break. We're going to come back and get right to the list. So there's someone selling cookies out there. I think it's Girl Scouts. Mr. Tully has the floor. Please be quiet. Mr. Tully has the floor. Please take your seats.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe Tully, Precinct 14.
Quiet, please.
I've supported every override and debt exclusion for the renovations and rebuilds of our schools since I've been here. And I came here prepared tonight to support this one, and I don't see anything that would change my mind. I thank the folks that presented for the diligence of their presentation, and barring some catastrophic unforeseen argument on the other side, I can't imagine that I won't likewise support this project. But I do have one question, which is, or a concern, I suppose. It appears that in the past several years, our forecasting for student population growth is maybe would be described as spotty at best. What sort of assurance do we have that if we spend this money on this project, that we will not be in short order seeking to expand the building to meet another unforeseen wave of students?
Dr. Bodie?
Good evening, town meeting members. Kathleen Bodie, Superintendent of Schools. We've had 2 different analyses. One is our own internal analysis of the projection. It's based on a mathematical formula. And as many of you are aware, we've also had a forecasting that was done several years ago. Let me just give you an idea of the situation in our schools today. Last year, we graduated 313 students, and our entering kindergarten this year was 586. We have 4 grades in our elementary that are 500 or more, and 2 that are in the high 400s. So we are seeing for the foreseeable future very large growth of students. Our current kindergarten numbers are not quite at 500, but it's only April. We're moving in that direction as well. Our prediction for this year, using our own internal calculations based on births and weighted averages, is about 536 students.
I apologize for sitting down and reclaiming my time. The current population is about 1,400, correct? Correct. And we're building this proposed project to accommodate 1,800 or so students?
The design number is 1755 for the high school, for the new high school.
And at what point in time, what year do we think we will hit 1755, or are we suspecting we never will? We're giving
No,
ourselves
I
some
think
cushion.
we're thinking that we're going to open pretty much at our design number.
So
When the school is fully built out.
when the school's fully built, we're going to be at 100% capacity, and we
Close.
will not be able to accommodate
No,
more. If our forecast is off by some factor, we won't be able to accommodate the additional students?
Oh, we will. We will. The design number determines the number of homerooms that you have, but we're designing the core areas of the school to accommodate a potential larger number. I think it's very hard to predict, more than 10 years out, 20 years out, what the population will be in Arlington. Certainly, what we have seen historically is that there's been highs and lows, as many as 2,000, then it dipped low in the 80s. That's hard to know, but what I can tell you is that we have had a steady increase in the number of students in Arlington for a number of reasons. I have to say for sure, for the quality of the schools, but also the location of Arlington and the great services and community that new people enjoy.
I'll try not to belabor the point, but we're going to build a school for a planned student population of 1755, is that what you said?
That is the design number.
Okay. And what would be the maximum number of students that design might be able to accommodate?
I think we could probably go to 2,000. It just would really be determinative of how many students we would have in a class at a time. A class size of 550 students in kindergarten does not necessarily translate into a graduating class of 550. So there is flexibility in the new design for a number greater than 1755.
Right. Thank you.
Well, I think he...
Matthew Janger, high school principal. Just a couple of things to add on to what Dr. Bodie was saying. In the educational program, when we went through and planned the spaces, we planned for 1,755. We looked at 855, which at the time was the 10-year population, which is about 8 years now. In addition, the building is designed, if you look on the ends of the two academic wings, for additional program spaces to be able to be added on easily. So we have central spaces that are a little bit larger, not than we need, but larger so that they would accommodate the larger population. And there are addition spaces for when we get 10 years out. We don't really want to build for space we don't need that far in advance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yontel?
Timur Kayantar, Precinct 7. Mr. Moderator, I rise in support of Article 1, and I urge my fellow town meeting members to vote yes. In full disclosure, I have 2 daughters in Arlington Public Schools, and if the high school is rebuilt, for at least part of their time in high school, they should benefit from the new building. But even for those of you with no kids or grandkids in our public schools, supporting the rebuild is in your interest. Our town's schools deliver quality education, even with lower per-student spend than many of our neighboring communities. That great education has been enhanced by improvements to the learning environment. Today we have new or renovated school buildings for grades K through 6, buildings that students, teachers, and staff can go to every day with pride. Now, Arlington High was ranked 5th among non-magnet, non-charter high schools in Massachusetts, and that's despite the challenges of its deteriorating facility. How wonderful it would be if our students, teachers, and staff at the high school enjoyed as beneficial a learning environment as do our elementary schools, one that would address the educational needs of the next century, a school facility all of us in the town could be proud of. And how horrible it would be if the high school were not rebuilt but continued to crumble, and our accreditation, already on warning, were revoked, a badge of shame for the town. Mr. Moderator and fellow town meeting members, the great philosopher Andrew Lloyd Webber in his masterwork, Evita, taught us politics is the art of the possible. Getting to where we are now in the high school rebuild has been a political process. And by that I mean people deliberated, they aired their views, they revealed their preferences, they weighed the constraints, they determined what was possible, and they compromised. Now, no one loves a compromise. It would be terrific if the high school could look just as it does today on the outside, and be shiny and new on the inside, and be completely rebuilt with no disruption to the students, and cost half of the current price tag. Terrific, but not possible. Let us remember that democracy is government by discussion, a discussion that involves vigorous debate of contesting opinions. And as Senator Moynihan of New York used to say, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. Alas, there have been, shall we say, alternative claims laid out before the town. No one should waste our time by telling us that installing new windows and insulation in Fusco House would solve the problems of that structure. And needless to say, stating that we could do a gut renovation, as was done at Gibbs, but simply do it 6 times larger would hardly work. The Gibbs reno took a summer, a full school year, and another summer. So while it was happening at the high school, where would we put our students? And I will not stand before you and call the work of the building committee a disgrace, because it's not. It is good work, hard work, and thankless work, but I thank them. And as Mark Antony might say, if he were here today, friends, Arlingtonians, town meeting members, lend me your ears. I come to praise the building committee, not to bury them. I am not asking you for applause, because we don't do that in town meeting. But we should all applaud their work silently in our hearts. Thank you for listening. Please vote yes today and again on June 11th.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pachter?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Adam Pachter, Precinct 14, father of Lucy, first year at the high school, and Maya, who will be there in 4 years. I've been a member of town meeting for 16 years now, and in all those years I've only spoken a handful of times. But this one is important. It's important for my kids. It's important for your kids. It's important for our kids. And I urge you to vote yes today on the warrant article and on June 11th, so we can give our kids a safe, comprehensive high school that will prepare them to be the kind of 21st century citizens our community and our country need. Now, I use that term 21st century very deliberately, and it's in response to some of the arguments against the rebuild that I've been hearing. And I caution my fellow town meeting members, just because someone speaks against something the loudest or the longest, that doesn't mean their arguments are the strongest. And one of those arguments goes along the lines of, well, when I went to Arlington High in insert decade here, it was just fine. My friends and I did fine. So why do you need all that money now? Which, if you think about it, is kind of like saying, when I was in my 20s, I was healthy, so why should I go to a doctor in my 70s? Bodies and buildings age, and the last renovation was in 1981, almost 40 years ago. Believe me, if you don't go to the doc for 40 years, you're gonna have problems. And the high school does. The infrastructure is literally falling apart. But beyond that, educational standards have changed. What passed muster in 1981 doesn't today. Think about it. In 1981, you could smoke on any airplane, and you didn't have to wear seatbelts in any state. In fact, all through high school, my buddy used to insist it was safer not to wear them in the back seat. Now, I had my 30th high school reunion last May, and if my school had looked the same in 2018 as when I graduated in 1988, I would have been horrified. Things change, and that's okay. In fact, it's essential. Another argument I hear is, sure, the high school has some problems, but why can't we just fix what's wrong? Why do we need a total rebuild? And again, that's kind of like the car you bought 20 years ago, right? I bet you can still remember the first time you drove it new and how it used to run like a dream. But the years go by and things start to go wrong. Brakes squeal, you get a flat, one of the belts wears out. And at first you just fix those things. But 15 years in, the stuff gets more serious. No matter how good your car was, no matter how fond your memories are, that's not going to keep the transmission going forever. And I want you to picture the high school as a 20-year-old car. Brakes grinding, muffler dangling, gears crumbling. There's that check engine light that won't go off no matter what you do. And you know that car is never going to pass inspection. You could buy it back piece by pricey piece, and it still wouldn't run like new. It's never going to run like new again, unless you do the right thing and get a new car, or in this case, a newly rebuilt high school. Because make no mistake, the high school right now, and I know because my Lucy's there, is not safe. And that's despite all the efforts of faculty and staff. There are halls that lead nowhere, unsecure access points, ceilings and bathrooms falling apart. Just this school year, they had to shut the courtyard because they were afraid falling debris would injure kids, and closed the school early one afternoon because the temperature in the classrooms exceeded 100 degrees. Look, I like the old facade too, and I love the lawn, but we're talking about our children's future here. And just because the solution the committees came up with doesn't reflect your personal preferences, that doesn't mean your input was ignored. I live literally steps from the Addison, and I didn't want my Maya to have to go across town to the Gibbs for a year. But the school committee in that case made a different call, and it wasn't because there was some kind of grand conspiracy against me. No. Then and now, they made the decision that's best for Arlington as a whole. This has been a careful, deliberative process that has lasted years. But now's the time. Now's our chance to get the state to kick in $86 million. We vote no, that money goes somewhere else, and there are plenty of other towns that would be happy to take it. So I'll end with this. It's time, town meeting. It's time to step up, pitch in, and vote yes. For my kids, for your kids, for our kids. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Warden? Mrs. Warden?
Patricia Warden, Precinct 8. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Our grandchild will be entering Arlington High School very soon. He has already played soccer and played recitals at the high school and is looking forward to studying there. Also, all 5 of our children graduated from Arlington High School. We need a high school which has renovated its historic buildings and has added new buildings designed by architects skilled in energy conservation and in rehabilitation of classic buildings designed to last for centuries. The architects chosen for the Arlington High School project are skilled in neither. Arlington High School has been terribly neglected by school and town officials. Renovation and addition should have been done 15 years ago. Our 10 older schools, like Central School, are different from the shoddy new elementary schools that we have had to replace Some older schools have lasted for over 100 years and will last for 100 years more. Fusco is a huge classic building with plenty of natural light and air circulation, and when renovated could easily accommodate almost a quarter of regular classroom needs. Buildings like Fusco and Column have masonry, granite, and heavy, irreplaceable timbers. Those buildings can be renovated with spectacular results, like the mill buildings in Lawrence. Once abandoned and vandalized, now are beautiful university facilities, Massachusetts government offices, luxury condominiums, restaurants, research laboratories, medical offices, fitness clubs, light industry. They are gold mines. You need to see them before any vote to destroy our own historic buildings. Or go look at the Robbins Library or at Gibbs School. Robbins Library renovation, I was on the building committee. Its renovation, a large addition, cost $12 million in today's dollars. The Arlington High School planned project is 25 times greater than the Robbins renovation and its very large addition. 25 times greater. And what about Gibbs? Please do go to see that. It cost $27 million, not hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was done by different architects. Thank goodness. With the Arlington High School architect's design, we will get a ruined and plundered high school site close to the street and inferior buildings with inadequate energy conservation and sustainability and a lifetime of only a few decades. A different design is needed, starting with the renovation of Fusco and Column. Preservation should bring us more funding. Renovation could be finished in one summer. The building is already there, so the architect, engineering, and inspection costs would be minimal. The town could fund the renovation part itself while waiting for state funds to become available. It would cost less than $29 million. We have done that with other small projects. The large gym at the rear should be demolished to make way there for a huge new addition. The gym should be replaced temporarily by an inflatable gym on the front lawn or in the rear. When the huge new addition is finished, the students can then occupy that, and additional specialized new construction should begin at the rear and side with proper student phasing so the education is not disrupted. The town should just get on with it. Project proponents state that the cost of their Arlington High School project can be justified by comparison to similar high costs of Waltham, Somerville, and Belmont new high schools. That is ludicrous. Somerville and Waltham have very expensive vocational programs. We do not. Our vocational education facility has already been built, our Minuteman Regional Vocational School. Belmont's new school is for grades 7 through 12, well over 2,000 students, but not comparable at all. Our schools should not cost nearly as much. If we demolish our historic buildings, that gives a terrible message to our children of a throwaway society which has abandoned environmental stewardship and importance of first-rate architecture, preservation, and open space. What does that do for their education? What does the removal of the only large green space on Massachusetts Avenue between Cambridge Common and Lexington do for any of us? Maybe if the iconic Arlington High School buildings and site are destroyed, then someday in the future, your child or grandchild may tell you that they have heard that there used to be a beautiful green park at Arlington High School, and there was a building there just like the State House. Maybe they will ask you why it was taken away. Maybe you will answer like a good Soviet parent. explaining how so much of Soviet Russia's heritage has disappeared, you will say, that was a long time ago, and it never happened anyway. Please vote no on Article 1. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Ruderman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Michael Ruderman, Precinct 9. I'm going to vote for Article 1, and I would urge you to do also. I'd like to say why. I have a question about some algebra, but we'll get to that. Mr. Pachter's speech reminded me of one I gave, I'm not sure how many years ago, asking for the very same support with the very same passion and interest to hold us true to the promises that we made decades ago in completing the project to rebuild all of the elementary schools. That was when my daughter was at Thompson. I've realized recently that now in my 19th year as a town meeting member and my daughter turning 21, one of the first phrases she probably heard at home was, "Daddy's going to a meeting tonight." So when she was in the Thompson, I knew intimately how the frost built up on the windows inside, how you couldn't get from one end of the building to another without slamming into a class change. All the very same issues that have come to the fore in the depiction of the insufficiencies and deficiencies of our present high school. And I was ready to bang my shoe, Khrushchev style, on the podium to make sure that people would finish the elementary school project and build the new Thompson. And you did. And I'm grateful that you did. And then when it came time for the Minuteman School to be rebuilt, I urged you, I campaigned twice on that. I campaigned in this town and then across the entire 16-town district. We won that vote, and I'm grateful that we did. In fact, you heard my daughter speak on that herself as a town meeting member, asking for you to honor the commitment to all of our students, that all of our students deserve the very best school that fosters the very best of educations. And I'll take a moment to brag that the Minuteman School project is ahead of time, on budget, and will open in the fall. Totally rebuilt. Thank you. I really appreciate your positive vote on that. And so that's why I'm going to ask you to vote for yes on question 1. Now, my wife and I, our child-rearing years are behind us. We won't have a child in the Arlington Public School system, not in this high school, not ever. But we voted for the previous rebuilds, and we urged you to vote for the previous rebuilds for many of the same reasons that Mr. Yarntar mentioned. That these kids, his daughters, they're lovely daughters, I've met them, they're sweet girls. They deserve the very best that we can give them, just like every decade, every generation in this town has given its students. And I'll tell you, as one of the representatives of that class of taxpayers that are never going to get the big bang for the bucks that we're going to pay for this, that this is right. This is just. This is equitable. This is what we owe the present generation. Which leads me to my question. I want us to vote with our eyes wide open and fully informed of all the facts. I commend the School Building Committee for a very well done presentation. I was skeptical that it could hold anybody's attention for an hour. It did. And it answered a lot of the questions that came up at the neighborhood meetings and the precinct meetings. Not simply just trust the process. It's all in there. Read the reports. No, it was out here tonight. I do think, though, that I would like to call attention to one facet of the school's cost. If I heard correctly, the state's reimbursement rate, with the incentives that we have won, is nearly 50% for the eligible items. The effective reimbursement rate, counting eligible and ineligible items, is closer to 30%. Mr. Moderator, could someone give me the 2-minute version of how much the ineligible for reimbursement items cost and the reason that we felt it was justified to add those to the building design?
Mr. Chapdelaine?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. The major reason that there's a difference between the 49.72 and the 30% is that the MSBA has a $333 per square foot cap. So as you saw, our construction cost is $576 per square foot, but everything over $333 per square feet is deemed ineligible. So that's the major reason why there's a difference between the 49.72 and the 30. The other reasons are the MSBA puts caps on the size of a gymnasium, a library, and an auditorium. However, they let districts go above that reimbursable cap within another cap based on the programmatic desires of the district. So the Arlington High School Building Committee has proposed, and the MSBA accepted, a larger gym, a larger auditorium, and a larger library to be able to not just provide programming today, but also have the flexibility, as Dr. Bodie mentioned earlier, for what could potentially be larger enrollments in the future. So generally speaking, the combination of that square footage cap as well as planning larger spaces for the gym, auditorium, and library explains the bulk of the difference between the 49.72 and the 30%.
Thank you. And is there a succinct reason why the square footage allowance is so different between what the MSBA will compensate for and what our building design arrives at?
So I can't really speak for the MSBA, but my understanding is they primarily put that in place as a budget control mechanism for them. And in conversations we've had with them, they are struggling to cope with the fact that many of these projects are coming in at square foot construction costs significantly larger than that 333. So we saw Belmont, we saw Waltham, Somerville, Saugus, all starting to creep up pretty significantly higher than 333. They only have so much from the penny on the tax rate that they receive, and I think one of the major ways that they stretch those dollars further is by putting that square footage cost cap.
Thank you. It seems to me as if this is more of a question of a shortage on the funding end rather than exceeding allowable and customary costs on the building end. Like I said, this is a matter of being just and right and equitable to the next generation of students. As all the generations of Arlingtonians built the schools that we have inhabited and we have profited from, we can do the same for them. I urge a positive vote on Article 1.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fisher? Gentleman next, Mr. Pachter. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Greg Christiana, Precinct 15. First, if we vote this down, a 5-year delay in getting back into the MSBA process, as Senator Friedman suggested earlier tonight, at 4% year-over-year increase in construction costs is more than 21% increase in construction costs for the same project, 21%. And that's if the MSBA lets us back into the process, which is a big if. Time is money, so let's not waste it. Second, I've attended several building forums put on by the building committee. Probably at every one of those forums, I heard voices of dissent. And as a town that proudly embraces democracy, we should embrace dissent and debate. But some of those voices have claimed that there hasn't been an opportunity for public input. I know this because I heard these complaints voiced during public input at building forums. Maybe you're as confused as I am by that. Lastly, I have doubled and triple checked the numbers published by the building committee myself. I've read through all their documents and cost projections and the escalations. I've emailed officials at Skanska and asked about their methodology and calculations. And every number I could get my hands on has checked out. I've been impressed by the thorough, deliberative, and open process that the building committee has conducted on this massively complex project. I strongly support this project and urge town meeting to approve it overwhelmingly tonight to signal to Arlington voters in June that this town is united in building our future together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Deist?
John Dice, Precinct 13. What I'm going to say is primarily addressed to the homeowners of Arlington, but I think that what I say also benefits renters as well. And in a sense, I'm going to elaborate a little bit on what Ted Peluso said last time. Location, location, location. Arlington real estate is red hot. You all know this. You just have to look around in the town and see how contractors are building houses as fast as they can because of the way in which this town, this wonderful town, created in many ways by this town meeting, is so relatively hot in terms of real estate. Over the last 10 years, our homes have appreciated by about 75%. Last year, your home appreciation was approximately 6% plus. The tax rate is just above 1%. So you gained 5% essentially on your real estate last year. If you had a $750,000 home, you made $35,000. If you had a $1 million home, which is not unusual in this town, you made $50,000 last year. In a manner of speaking, our town is like the goose that lays the golden eggs. So what could rain on that parade? Well, how about a high school that loses its accreditation because of physical deterioration? Investing in a new high school is a very good investment. What could be better for our real estate than a spanking new school right there on Massachusetts Avenue? Vote for the debt exclusion. Don't cook the goose that lays the golden egg.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warden?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Worden, Precinct 8. I should like to ask the town meeting to hear from a gentleman who has some capacities, unfortunately not present on the building committee. He's a graduate of Arlington High School, and he's a historian. Mr. David Baldwin, one of my constituents.
Thank you, Mr. Worden. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is David Baldwin. I live on Academy Street. And as you'll deduce from my Arlington accent, I'm a proud graduate of Arlington High School, 1971. I have also been an Arlington historic preservationist for nearly 50 years. I was a high school volunteer at the old Schwalm Mill, their curator of historic machinery, on the board of trustees, and later the co-chair of the trustees. At the Historical Society, I cut the Jason Russell House lawn in junior high and was the first museum director, on the board of directors, and later the president of the society. I have served on the Arlington Historical Commission, and I presently serve on the Arlington Historic Districts Commission. In my spare time, for the past 34 years, I have worked at the MITRE Corporation as their corporate historian and currently as a senior ISR analyst. The bottom line up front, our children are the future. Arlington High students deserve the best possible education in a state-of-the-art learning environment that includes our landmark historic school buildings. Next slide. In 2019, American youth are experiencing an epidemic of loneliness and isolation. Historic preservation is an important component of a solution by giving us a sense of belonging and roots. Preservation and renovation of historic landmark high school buildings and the Memorial Park need to be part of the future. Tonight, you deliberate and vote on a defining issue: the demolition of 2 remaining historic landmark buildings and the adjacent Memorial Park. These town treasures have been designated by Preservation Massachusetts to the 2018 Massachusetts Most Endangered Historic Resources list. They have also been nominated and a finalist to be designated to the 2019 National Trust for Historic Preservation, America's 11 Most Endangered Historic Places. As town meeting members, you must contemplate the past, the present, and decide our future. Historic preservation gives life and meaning to buildings, landscapes, and history that would otherwise be lost. Arlington's few remaining historic buildings and open spaces are integral to the fabric of our lives. They provide a tangible daily link to the past, the encouragement of civic responsibility, and our sense of belonging. Next slide. We are all stewards of the past and share the responsibility for preserving the rich historic tapestry of Arlington. Our action or inaction will be our legacy to our children and the subsequent generations. The future is ours to shape. Please vote for the future. Save Arlington's historic landmark high school buildings. Thank you for the opportunity of speaking tonight. I'd also like to mention that, I still have 3 minutes, that so much of what I've heard tonight is about a history of neglect of the buildings, the beautiful, well-built buildings that we have. And it's actually a testament to the craftsmanship and the quality of those buildings that, given the neglect of the last 25 years, they're still surviving and doing quite well. Well, doing almost quite well, but in need of a lot of work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jameson?
Mr. Moderator, I move to terminate debate on all matters.
We have motion to terminate debate on all matters before us under this article. Let's use our clickers to take a vote on that. This is kind of a test also. So it's a 2/3 vote. Fifteen. All right, 1 to terminate debate, 2 to not terminate. 1 to terminate debate, 2 to continue speaking. It's a 2/3 vote, 166 in the affirmative, 50 in the negative. That brings us to an actual vote on the article as presented by the Finance Committee in their report. When Jeff's ready. We have before us recommended vote of the Finance Committee. And all in favor of the recommended vote, please press 1 for yes. All opposed, press 2 for no. 1 for yes, 2 for no. Hello? I have to call the vote. We have an affirmative vote, 208 in favor, against 10 against. The vote carries. That closes Article 1, brings us to Article 2. Recommended vote on Article 2, no action. All in favor of no action, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? Unanimous vote of no action on Article 2, and I so declare it. That closes Article 2. Brings us to Article 3. We have a recommended vote of the Finance Committee. $70,000 for zoning. Anyone want to address this article? Hi. You want to address the article? Sure, come on up.
Thank you. Joanne Preston, Precinct 9. I'm going to give you an opportunity to save the town some money. So, as you know, last Monday, if you remember back then, there was considerable evidence presented that showed that outside consultants did not aid in developing a well-designed zoning plan. For instance, you saw what the outside consultants created for an Arlington mixed-use business district. You have it there. It's a lovely drawn building, but it has nothing to do with Arlington. As you'll notice, all those big buildings in the background, anybody know where that is? It's not in Arlington. Indeed, the rezoning amendments proposed under the direction of these consultants were not appropriate for Arlington's objectives and circumstances, and actually could have produced some harm. The displacement of moderate income tenants who live in those apartment buildings along Mass Ave and Broadway, and also our small businesses, whom we all value very much. Arlington has many skilled experts in the field of zoning, urban planning, business development, real estate economics. We heard actually 3 of them last Monday night. They live in Arlington, they understand the town's needs and objectives, and are willing to donate time to develop appropriate and effective zoning studies that will actually increase affordable housing and strengthen local businesses. Arlington volunteer experts can be found on many of our town committees, and this practice has worked out well for Arlington. This Arlington-based resource should be fully used before asking taxpayers to cover the expenses of outside consultants, which haven't worked out very well, and which cost the town $70,000. Now, after, I have the number here, after just voting $291 million, $70,000 may seem like chicken feed, but it's not for a number of people in my neighborhood, people who are retired, who are struggling to pay the tax increases. I ask you to vote no on this needless and excessive expense, and let's use our own experts that have done so well with a permanent town building committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Beth Ann Friedman, Precinct 15. I also urge you to vote no on this article. The town planning group actually has 10 employees to a total cost to the town of $649,000. I would think that among those individuals, there should be enough expertise to address the issue of how to implement the master plan. And if not, as the other speaker indicated, there are so many individuals in Arlington that can offer advice and expertise to the planning committee. So the expenditure of an additional $70,000 to go outside of Arlington to hire consultants who don't know a town and who don't understand all of the issues that need to be addressed at the same time, conservation of green space, in addition to building additional housing and affordable housing. I think that we need to think twice about spending this money and approving this article. So again, I urge you to vote no.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman. Mr. Jameson?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Gordon Jameson, Precinct 12. As I mentioned the other night, this body voted overwhelmingly to support the master plan and thereby, through the master plan, its implementation. The types of articles we considered the other night, whether you were for them or against them, are the type of articles that this body, through the master plan, asked for. I look forward to working on the articles that were presented the other evening and see if we can come up with a way that is amenable, that will win the confidence of town meeting. In relation to this article and Article 5, if I may, as I understand it from reading the residential study group's minutes for a study that is ongoing and needs to be completed, and these studies, at least one of them, their membership, who one might consider useful in this process, have, by my reading of their minutes, they have declined to do this work. Therefore, we need to hire someone, I believe, to do this work. And could perhaps the moderator or Mr. Dunn, who raised his hand, address the needs for this and what we expect to get and why both of these are required? Thank you. Should I ask Jenny? Well, he.
Mr. Chapdelaine will address it. I didn't see Ms. Raitt over there.
Mr. Chapdelaine has delegated.
Well, I didn't see Ms. Raitt. I thought she was not at her table, so.
Good evening. Jennifer Raitt, Director of Planning and Community Development. So the question, would you please?
The question is, my understanding is the RSG has declined respectfully in the minutes to participate in these types of studies, the one that's ongoing plus future ones, which may include Article 3, Article 5. What do we hope to get from this? And I assume that the staff cannot do these types of studies.
Sure. The zoning bylaw working group would be the one who would be reviewing any zoning language or articles that would come before town meeting, as well as the Arlington Redevelopment Board. The residential study group was formed to look at the impacts of new development in existing neighborhoods, particularly single and two-family. That would be related to Article 5, which I'm not going to necessarily speak to at this moment in time. These funds, actually, what we were planning to do, so this builds off of the first funding request that we asked for in 2017, which was approved by this body for $55,000. We actually used $35,000 of that money to put together the signed bylaw, which was adopted last week. This request is actually to investigate the industrial zoning. And so the purpose of this request is to hire an economic development consultant, which, yes, we have capacity on staff, but as recommended in the master plan, we would like to be able to hire a consultant who would perform a variety of analyses looking at the very viable industrial zoning districts that we have and opportunities to do something a little bit more innovative with uses, looking at the dimensional and density regulations and a lot of other things that would include additional studies and analyses to improve those innovations and ultimately come back to this body with recommended language for zoning. So that's what we were planning to do with the $70,000. And I'm glad to speak more to that if you have further questions.
Thank you. And so, by contrast to the comments that were made previously on this article, these are not related to the things we discussed the other evening, including my comments. And I think this is an appropriate stepwise step forward towards further trying to understand how we can best use the limited land that we have to its highest and best use and I recommend a positive vote on this article. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Thornton?
Barbara Thornton, Precinct 16. I rise in favor of voting in favor of transferring the $70,000. As one of the volunteer experts on municipal issues and zoning and things like that, because of my background, I am going to still volunteer for free, and I suspect strongly that everybody else in this room and others in the community will also volunteer for free. We have $70,000, as Mr. Yontar said earlier. It's nice to have the real facts and not just the opinions of the town. So I hope that you will all invest $70,000 and get us a consultant to help with these things.
Thank you. Thank you. This woman way in the back. Okay, Al Tosti. Al? Al?
I was as an individual, upset with a lot of the density rules and changes that were being proposed, because from a strictly financial point of view, from the town and balancing the budget, we don't need larger numbers of people in this town. We need commercial space, we need office space, we need industrial space that bring in taxes. Look at downtown Boston. Go down in the South Boston waterfront. And it's just huge building after building after building, their office space. Boston is rolling in money. They have so much cash, they haven't even certified their free cash yet, because they don't want their own people to know how much cash they have. Go down into Cambridge, go to Kendall Square, building after building after building. Cambridge has $341 million in free cash. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. Office space, industrial space, retail space produces tax revenue and causes very little demand on the services of the town. Residents, especially since we're really close on all our town services, and especially our schools, we don't have a lot of extra capacity. And that's why I'm really looking forward to this. As you'll notice in our comment, it's looking at our industrial zoning district. It's looking at all the areas back around where MIRAC is, the Schwam, not the Schwam Mill, but the Schwam Old Piano. And that has some innovation districts, cafes, things like that. That's what we really need. That's what we need to expand as space becomes available there, and we need to move quickly if a developer looks like that would be something they're interested in doing. This will give us the tools and the resources to move our development in that direction. I urge favorable action on this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jelka?
Daniel Jalka, Precinct 6. I move to terminate debate on Article 3. Thank you.
Motion to terminate debate in the article. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? It's a two-thirds vote, and I so declare it. That brings us to the recommended vote of the Finance Committee as printed in their report on Article 3 for $70,000. As soon as Jeff's ready. Looking good. We didn't get Kramer. All in favor, please press 1 for yes. Opposed, 2 for no. 1 for yes, 2 for no. It's an affirmative vote, 192 in the positive and 20 in the negative. It carries. It's a vote, and I so declare it. That closes Article 3. Brings us to Article 4, disposition of real estate. Mr. Tosti.
This is an article to dispose of a small 260 square foot piece of land that is land bound by other private property. And I ask Mr. Heim, Town Council, to go into a little bit more detail on it.
Mr. Heim?
Good evening, Doug Heim, Town Council. I'll be brief. The town took this property by tax title back in the 40s. It is a landlocked artisanal well that the town probably shouldn't have taken if it had the choice. And there's really very little utility to it, but this particular circumstance arises because of a claim that was submitted against the town by an abutting property owner. We want to have the flexibility to try to reach a reasonable agreement with this property owner. The parcel, in terms of its value, we have had the parcel assessed as required by the town bylaws. I'd rather not go into the specific value because there's a potential negotiation if town meeting will indulge me with that discretion. But the long and short of it is we've got a tiny parcel that is essentially a well. We'd like to be able to dispose of it if we can. If we can't, then we'll obviously keep the parcel and required to maintain it over time. So that's the long and short of a very strange situation that involves an aqueduct company that acquired this back in the 1800s. So I'll look forward to questions about it.
Mr. Schlickman?
Paul Schlickman, Precinct 9. Well, well, well. You know, in doing my homework for this, anytime these little properties come up, you try to go and find it on the official planning and zoning and parcel map. And it took me the better part of the hour searching around through the GIS viewer to actually find this tiny little square on the map, which has no value to the town. And certainly if it gets us out of a brouhaha with the abutting owners, it's worthwhile doing. I strongly recommend an affirmative vote on this.
Ted Sharp, Precinct 7. Sorry, I have a personal issue with what we've done or what we've attempted to do in the past on some of these tiny parcels, which is to kind of speculate on the land value. The town is not in the business of that. I think a taking is a very serious business that the town should not enter into lightly. If we find that we don't have a use for the property, we ought to dispose of that land that we took unjustifiably for a cost not greater than today's value of what we compensated the owner for the taking. So I will vote in favor of giving you the authority to negotiate this, but I would caution you that we should not try to extort unreasonable value. The town is not in the business of land speculation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Ruderman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Michael Ruderman, Precinct 9. Perhaps I can allay the fears that there's any opportunity of land speculation here. The property is a rectangular parcel of land, 8 feet by 12 feet, 196 square feet. It was formerly owned by the Middlesex Aqueduct Company from before the turn of the last century. Had it not been for someone in the Aqueduct Companies realizing that they were going to lose their rights to this artesian well, which sits squarely in between two existing house lots, and they would have lost it to adverse possession over the decades, They went and registered and confirmed the title. So there's a land court plan that says this is theirs, even though there's no use for it anymore, even though the Middlesex Aqueduct Company has long since gone out of business, even though since the 1940s this property went into tax title, which was foreclosed by the town. Not only does it not present an opportunity for speculation, it presents a liability, as Mr. Heim alluded to, in that it is in deteriorating condition and the abutting owners to our property say our property is breaking down and causing risk and hazard to their property. That's why the town needs to have the flexibility of acting on this, and I ask you for a positive vote on the article.
Never mind. Anyone else wish to address the article? Seeing none, because we're disposing of land, we're going to actually take a counted vote on this. So all in favor of giving Mr. Heim authority to negotiate a reasonable settlement, press 1. If you're opposed to that, press 2. And go ahead and vote. It's unanimous vote, 218 the positive, 0, and I so declare it. That closes Article 4 and brings us to Article 5. $50,000 for the residential design guidelines. Mr. Tosti.
Prime purpose of this was to develop design guidelines so as a development or a project goes through the planning process, whether it be the redevelopment board or be the zoning board of appeals, that rather than people relying on individual, I'm not going to say whims or opinions or things like that, they'll have a certain set of guidelines to go by, to agree with that. And that's the purpose of this. And I think if the Director of Planning and Community Development would like to add to that, I'd appreciate it.
Jennifer Raitt, Director of Planning and Community Development. Thank you. Many municipalities in Greater Boston have design review boards or commissions, and then also the companion design guidelines. What we want to do is, with this sum of money, $50,000, be able to hire a consultant who will help us to both develop those design guidelines, which would apply to single and two-family homes in the R1, R0, R1, R2 districts, to guide with that review at the either the redevelopment board potentially, but really more like the zoning board of appeals, as well as the staff review, and then also to help us guide a process of what kind of body might be appropriate to assist in design review for the town of Arlington. We don't currently have any type of design review process. It happens at the staff level. It happens, as you heard already said by the previous speaker, that it's basically somewhat does not have some sort of really precise standards with photos, computer-generated graphics, diagrams, sketches, illustrations, things that it can essentially guide a potential developer or a project proponent through a design process. A lot of municipalities, as I mentioned, have this sort of thing set up, usually underneath a planning board or some other entity. We would like to be able to explore that here, and that is what we are proposing.
Thank you. Thank you. Ma'am?
Sophie Miazzo, Precinct 8. I just want to note, as opposed to Article 3, which seemed to be a unanimous vote of the Finance Committee, I note a 9-5 vote on this, so it makes me think that there's some reason or somebody out there didn't agree with this $50,000, and I want to make sure that there's an opportunity for members to speak to that. Thank you.
They can get up if they wish. Mr. Jameson, did you want to pass?
So obviously, Pat Hanlon, Precinct 5. This proposal emerged from work that staff did for the residential study group over the course of the last year. You may remember that at the last town meeting, we were directed to examine the problem of teardowns. And we did do that, and staff produced quite an interesting report on that and had a series of recommendations which at least partly addressed the problem, and this was one of them. One of the major issues with respect to teardowns is the design of the new houses and the questionable way in which they fit into the overall scheme of the neighborhood. When you talk to people about the problems they have, they frequently are talking about loss of tree coverage. They're talking about houses that are out of scale with the other houses in the neighborhood. And all of those things are things that could be addressed by design guidelines. Now, my understanding of the report that was presented to us and that we were generally in favor of was that part of what we needed is not just to provide guidelines, but to be able to implement them in a context that was independent of the ARB and the BZA. And so I was pleased when Ms. Raitt pointed out that this would also affect staff review, and that part of the problem of developing the design guidelines is developing a process by which you would implement them. This is exceedingly important because, to a considerable extent, new construction in Arlington, the teardowns that last year were of great concern and that to the Residential Study Commission study group are still of great concern, that those things largely fall out of the special permit process and they fall out of the ARB process. So it's necessary, if you want to have effective regulation of this sort of thing, it's necessary to have some sort of a mechanism, both either through directing staff review or for dealing with a different kind of procedure to make sure that they're effectively implemented in real cases, and that the cases that you care about most are not going to be the cases that evade review. I think that this is a terrific, I'm speaking just for myself now, I think that this is a terrific step forward. It is not a step that addresses all of the problems with teardowns, as you can readily see, but it does address, in its way, a certain problem that desperately needs to be addressed with new construction in Arlington. And I encourage you to vote in favor of the Financial Committee's recommendation to support this appropriation.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Peluso?
Ted Peluso from precinct number 6. I think you should vote yes, and I'll tell you why. I have this feeling that if this document was prepared after the no action vote that was taken on all of the redevelopment board projects from last Wednesday, you would have got 100% of the Finance Committee in favor of it. So in addition to the tear downs, I think you could use a little help on what you're going to look at for designs, because sooner or later you're going to have those residential buildings happening along Mass Avenue. So I would vote yes. No reason why not to.
Mr. Tremblay?
Ed Tremblay, Precinct 19. A previous speaker asked me to get up and talk. So I do have a question. The Article 3 and Article 5 were appropriating money for consultants. Do we know which consultants we're going to hire?
Mr. Chapdelaine?
Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. No for consultants, what am I trying to say? Consultant gigs of this size. Can't find that word. We'd have to issue an RFP, so we have to go through a competitive procurement to select a consultant, so we don't know at this time who we'd be hiring.
Okay. because I know in the town, in some of the previous zoning articles, we had the Metropolitan Area Planning Council was our hired consultant, and frankly, it seemed to me that engineer guy that was standing on the side door did a way better job than MAPC did. And so if we're going to spend this kind of money on it, then maybe we should hire him instead of MAPC.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am?
Karen Kelleher, Precinct 5. Now that I understand what this article is about, I wanted to rise to speak in favor of it. The design guidelines that we've talked about bring to mind many of the objections that were raised to Article 16 last week. Concerns about increased density, concerned about loss of open space, loss of trees. I happen to live in East Arlington, and there have been no less than 10 teardowns on my street in the 12 years I've lived on it. A lot of people were concerned about a change of character of the town that might happen if we did have increased density. Well, let me tell you, the character of our town is changing. There is an increase in density happening. There is a loss of open space. Those 10 teardowns in each case have been replaced by a two-family, pretty much luxury condominium. Those are selling for $800,000 to $900,000 per unit at this point. Those units are typically double the size of the house that was on the lot before, and there are 2 of them, so you're getting 4 times the building on the lot. All of the things that people raise, I don't know about all, but many of the things that were raised as concerns for our commercial corridors and a change in the character there are also changes that are happening in other parts of town. So I encourage the town to be really thoughtful about how we do that and to hire the consultants they need. I also feel I need to sort of say, we've been really vilifying MAPC and CHAPA in the course of our conversations here. And I don't really, I think that's misplaced. We're looking for a bunch of things from our discussion here. There's a consultant who goes through a process, and then there's a process where the town has to take the input from that consultant and decide whether it makes sense for our town and provide feedback to that consultant and go back and forth. We decided not to vote on, or the redevelopment board pulled Article 16 because they felt we didn't have enough of that process. But that job of making sure that the product we're getting and the designs we're putting forth or the bylaws we're putting forth are right for the character of our community, that's our job. That's what we're doing. It's what happened during the course of that public process. It's what's happening in this room. And it's what I think we left that conversation saying, we need more time to do that process. So leave MAPC out of it. Let's take the process forward and have the conversation we need to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, if you want to move the question, that'd be cool.
Brian Hasbrook. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Brian Hasbrook, Precinct 9. I live on Sherborne Street, which extends to Webb Coward in the 9th Precinct. And a big issue for us, because it's zoned R2, but there's a kind of a mix of single and multifamily homes, we end up getting the teardowns. And you know, I tell people, because, you know, people in the neighborhood, they complain, and I say, look, you know, you have a right to build, and, you know, all of the criteria for design review really should be in the zoning code. However, there are a lot of people on my street for whom this is a very important issue, and I think it's worth studying. So I'm going to vote to support this article. Thank you.
Thank you. This gentleman over here in the striped shirt.
Good evening. My name is Ethan Zimmer. I'm from Precinct 4. I'm a little bit confused about what this is and how this would interact with the zoning laws and the building codes. Are these design guidelines going to be enforceable in the same way? And why can't we get this done with the zoning laws that we have?
Ms. Ray?
Jennifer Wright, Director of Planning and Community Development. It would be likely to be an advisory process to an existing board that makes decisions. So they make decisions on a case-by-case basis. they would have the design guidelines available to them to help assist with that, so as in an advisory capacity. The current zoning bylaws don't dictate design. They're not designed to do that. And so we're not proposing to put these as part of the zoning bylaw. They would be guidelines, just that.
So these would be used by, which board was it?
Likely the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Zoning Board of Appeals. In order
as well as staff review.
Okay, in order to make decisions on special permitting process?
On the special permitting, right,
okay.
process.
And these would be available to developers as they're coming up with their designs?
It would be available to any applicant of any special permit and any applicant during a permitting process who wished to view the design guidelines that would be ultimately put into some sort of guideline book. And then depending upon the outcome of the study of where we want to put this body, this advisory body, could be a separate process that an applicant could go through before going to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that's part of this process. What we're going to look at is figuring out where the advisory component would go.
So the money that we're voting today is just to study the issue. Would it come back before this body, before anything gets implemented?
So the Finance Committee, in their recommendation, I believe, requested that it come back to this body. It's not going to be a zoning bylaw amendment. It would just be the design guidelines, as well as whatever the process or the recommended body, the construction of that new body, would come back to town meeting as a recommendation.
So something would come back to
Something
us.
will come back to town meeting. I don't know what it will look like yet.
Okay,
My
so some
apologies.
recommendations would come to us, and that's the final decision.
And then that would be the final decision that would then base.
And then
on the next
amendments to these would then again come before this body before anything gets amended?
I think that would be determined during that,
Okay.
as we develop this process.
Okay. Okay, very good. I am all for studies and more information coming before this body. It helps us make decisions. Thank you.
Mr. Schlickman?
Paul Schlickman, Precinct 9, motion to terminate debate under all items under this article.
All in favor of terminating debate on this article, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? No. That's a 2/3 vote, and I so declare it. We have before us recommended vote of the Finance Committee for $50,000. All in favor, please press 1. If you're opposed, press 2. And vote. 1 for yes, 2 for no. It's 196 in the affirmative, 197 in the affirmative, 6 in the negative. It's a vote, and I so declare it. That closes Article 5 and brings us to Article 6. Recommended vote of the Finance Committee. No. Let's just finish so we can dissolve the special. It's $25,000 for the MUGAR application review process. So, Adam, you want to get up and tell us what's going on here? Why do you want to spend $25,000?
Doug Heim, Town Council. I'll try to be really quick. Back in 2016, this town meeting approved $25,000 to spend on engineers and special counsel to help us prosecute our rights relative to the MUGAR 40B application. We have used that money. We've used it very judiciously. Our special counsel has litigated our rights. We are awaiting a decision on the safe harbor status. But just to get there, we had to do a number of things like prosecute action to subpoena certain records from state for their data. So we'd ask that you continue to support the technical assistance that's necessary to defend the town's rights relative to the MUGAR application. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to discuss it, Mr. Quinn? Oh, does anyone want to discuss the question? Seeing none, all in favor of the recommended vote of the Finance Committee, please press 1 for yes. How about we take a voice vote? All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? It's a near unanimous vote, and I so declare it. Mr. Tosti. Yes, sir. Does anyone else want to reconsider Article 5? Oh, you didn't get a two-thirds vote. Mr. Tosti.
I move that the special town meeting be dissolved.
All in favor of dissolving the special town meeting of April 2019, please say yes. Yes. All opposed? It's so dissolved, and I declare it. Motion to adjourn. All in favor? Yes. Yes. See you next Wednesday.